Well, thank you very much, and we're thrilled to be joined by one of the most successful business leaders and people anywhere in the country, whether it's technology, no matter what business you're talking about, there's really nobody quite like him. Michael Dell, very much of a legend, who's here with his really exciting announcement. It's so amazing.
When I was a young boy, there wasn't any internet. There wasn't any World Wide Web. There wasn't any egghead sending you texts saying, those are the same thing. You don't have to say internet and World Wide Web. They're the same thing. There weren't any video games when I was a boy. Well, there was Pac-Man. That was a game, I guess. And Asteroids. Wizard of War. Scrambled. Defender was a hell of a lot of fun. Those were what we called video games. Did I say we didn't have video games? Because that would have been a mistake. But there is one thing you have now that we didn't have when I was a boy that I wish we did.
Mike Dell's World. Yeah, that's me. Hey, you guys still subscribed? Hey, appreciate it. So, yeah, it's been an interesting year so far, for sure. Not as interesting as last year, but still the same. So, I guess I got two major topics tonight. One being that there's something going on in technology, and I don't mean, computer processors and hard drives and that kind of thing, but a lot of stuff in, just basically, how tech works and, what tech is used for, and, just my normal rant. And plus, got some personal updates. Yeah, that's always fun. But yeah, it's true. Life goes on. Life is interesting. Of course, the last time I talked to you in February, I was complaining about customer service. Well, yeah, that hasn't really changed. A lot of customer service stuff isn't that great. But let's get back to the personal updates. There's a lot to tell, and there's not a lot to tell. Unfortunately, I've been to now 3 funerals in the last 6 months, or 2, and I'm about to go to another one in Detroit this weekend. But it's neither here nor there. Of course, my founder of Blueberry, Todd Cochran, he passed away late summer, early fall. Which you guys know all about, or might know all about, or don't know all about. I don't know. But that just seems recent enough to include. And then my wife's best friend, Mary, down in Grand Haven, passed away. And that was kind of a shocker because she's younger than us. But she was not in good shape and finally succumbed to lung problems mainly. But again, it's one of those things, but man, it's just, wow. Somebody younger than you passes away like that. It's a little bit of a shocker. Plus, of course, like I said, my wife's best friend, or one of her best friends, she has several best friends, but I think Mary was probably right up there at the top of the list. And so that was a little rough. Kathy spent most of February and March going back and forth downstate and, helping the family out and all that. And then a couple of weeks ago, we had an 88th birthday party for my uncle, Bill Busby. He was instrumental in starting Motorola Semiconductors back in the day. And anyway, we had his 88th birthday out at my mom's house. He was doing pretty good. But Monday morning, he passed away in his sleep, or soon after waking up or something. I I guess I don't know all the details, but he was 88 years old and had a really good run. So he was in really good shape, up until towards the last year. He had a little cancer issues. Was fighting it, I guess, okay. Or, I don't know. I guess the treatments really took some oomph out of him. But, last summer, he helped me move a couple campers, rode with me in the truck and, helped out and, had a nice conversation. So I was glad to have that going on. He was also a U.S. Air Force veteran, crew chief on the B-57, I want to say, or B-58. Might be the B-58. I don't remember. One of the fast bombers from the 50s, 60s. And but anyway, he passed away. So we're going down to the Detroit area for a funeral on Saturday. And ironically, my 98, soon to be 99-year-old grandmother's riding with me. So that'll be interesting. And as far as the health stuff goes, I about a little over a week ago developed a torn retina in my right eye and had to go in for emergency surgery to repair that. So it's been a bit of a recovery because the first week I had to be face down. They put a bubble in your eye and you got to keep your face down to hold everything in place while it heals. But I just had my second post-surgery checkup today, and everything's looking good, and I can function more or less normally. The vision in that eye isn't quite up to par, again, because I put an oil bubble in there. So that's a little weird. It kind of looks like, when people blur their Zoom background on camera. Well, that's what I see in the foreground as well with that eye, but 20/20 in the other eye. So we're highly functional. And he tells me once that oil bubble's out of there, vision should clear up just fine. So that also has me grounded for probably the next 6 weeks or so, which I guess is all right. It's cheaper not to fly than it is to fly. And I don't have anywhere to go in an airliner. So that's a thing. Sorry, I had to hit the cough button there. Kind of not fighting off. I think I'm just kind of having lingering crud because for the last month or so, I've had kind of a low-level cold going on. Whatever that bug was is taking its time leaving. But I don't know, a couple of weeks before, I don't know, I guess the middle of last month, went down to Arlington, Texas, and participated in the Military Creator Con. That was quite a nice outfit, couple 300, I guess, 400 people came to that, all veterans or active military or, military spouses, all talking about, creating YouTubes and podcasts and authoring books and starting businesses. And yeah, it was quite nice. And I knew a lot more people there than I thought I would when I went. Jamie J. And Christopher Lockhead, Gordon Firemark. He's the podcast lawyer. He was there. Of course, the creators of Military Creator Con. And I'm drawing a blank on the names, but anyway, it was definitely a fun event. It was one of those events though that had something scheduled from 8 a.m. till 11 p.m, all 3 days, and so it was quite busy. Didn't get a lot of chance to do anything other than event-related stuff, but it was all good, and yeah, so that was fun. I've since gotten promoted at Blueberry. I'm now the VP of Operations, so I kind of oversee the teams working together and do a lot of the day-to-day stuff. Also, external industry connections and all the stuff. A lot of the stuff that Todd did as CEO, but without the title. So that's okay. Our CEO now is one of our other co-founders, Barry. He's doing pretty good at that, trying to keep the cats all herded up. So we're doing okay over at Blueberry. That is good. So not complaining at all. It's a bit more work, a bit more responsibility, and definitely feel a lot more hands-on now than in the past. So if you are a podcaster and want to start a podcast, move a podcast, whatever, get a hold of me and we'll make it happen. We've got all the tools you need over there. I don't make this a commercial for my employee or employer, but hey, it's all part of it. And of course, I use Blueberry hosting for this show and PowerPress plugin and all the stuff. So, and speaking of technology, I had a whole thing I spun up, about, doing an episode all about, the different scams out there and all that. But, I think it's a bigger problem than that. Of course, there's what a lot of people call AI slop out there. And AI is really, really, really good at what it's really, really good at. But it's not good at everything. And also, AI created content. I don't know if you watch a lot of YouTube. I tend to watch a lot of YouTube. I consider that kind of my main TV. I don't really watch a whole lot of regular mainstream TV or streaming TV or anything like that. I watch a few things. Obviously, Star Trek, kind of like, having all those available on Paramount. And my wife and I usually pick some sort of series to watch or rewatch on Netflix or something like that. Currently in the middle of watching The Blacklist. That's an interesting show. A little gory. Kind of surprised it was on NBC, but hey, it's a pretty compelling show. But I tend to avoid things that have a lot of advertising if I can. You still get advertising, even on YouTube channels. I pay YouTube, so I don't have to watch all the poorly injected ads that they throw in there at exactly the wrong time. But, there's a lot of ads that are done by the creators. That's fine with me. But, when you're flipping through YouTube, you could get on to say, oh, this looks interesting. And you hit the button to play it. And you get what's obviously an AI narrated slideshow is what I equate it to. Or maybe they might have real video, something like that. And, it's not that I don't want to watch it. Some of it's really compelling. Here's I wouldn't call it a secret because I talk about it, but there's definitely a lot of, how should I say it? I definitely like one type of AI content that I actually enjoy. It's kind of my dirty pleasure, but I watch or listen to mostly, even though it is a YouTube video, AOA Karen stories. I know that sounds crazy, but they're oddly compelling, so I do watch that. But I know full well it's 100% AI, and that's fine. But I did just tonight, see an article over at Mac Rumors that YouTube will now automatically label AI videos even when creators don't. So apparently, and I haven't seen this yet, but in YouTube, it's going to be marked as an AI creation. So I applaud them for that, because I'm going to guess that the vast majority of views on YouTube are going to switch to the non-AI stuff. You know, I know I'm not going to totally avoid it, because some of it is actually pretty good. But if I have a video on a subject I want to watch or listen to on YouTube, and there's two, one of them's AI generated and one of them isn't, I'm probably going to lean towards the non-AI generated one. And that kind of brings me to podcasting in general as well. There are a lot of AI voiced podcasts. And let's get one thing off the table here. Yes, I know podcasts can be video. That's just true. That's okay. It's been that way since the beginning. But just having a YouTube channel does not necessarily constitute a podcast. A podcast is a distribution method and not necessarily a genre. So we'll just get that off the table. When I say the word podcast, I mean generally audio. But there's a lot of AI generated audio podcasts, and some of them are really quite clever. I get it. I get why they want to do it. But there's a company out there called Inception Point AI. I believe that's what they're called. And they are generating an enormous amount of AI-generated content on podcasts. And they were at Spreaker, and then they moved now to, Spotify, but it's Megaphone, which is owned by Spotify, as their hosting platform. And they've taken out the monetization so far, I guess. I haven't really listened to any of them, but, they're actually quite good to a point. But as AI is good at doing, they hallucinate, and a lot of the information that is put out by it is factually untrue, or something like that. These AI Karen stories that I like on YouTube, which, like I said, my dirty pleasure, whatever. I know they're AI, I know they suck, but they're mostly fiction, and they're not reported to be true stories. Whereas some of these other podcasts out there are reported to be true stories, true shows. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except for just the sheer volume of it. And they're not necessarily saying that these are AI generated. Now, there's sure telltale signs, not nearly as many as there once was, to tell it it's AI. But, and they're, like I said, they're quite good. The quality is good. The voices are good. The inflections, they sound pretty darn close to human. So, so that, that's what's kind of going on in, with AI and podcasting. And again, I use a little AI here and there. My artwork is somewhat AI generated, although I did a lot of tweaking to it, or I do a lot of tweaking to it. So it's not a 100% AI generated thing. I don't use any AI voices, except for the one episode I did just to try it a couple of years ago. I did one episode that was all AI. It was a clone of my voice, and it just didn't sound quite right. And, AI is getting better all the time, and, pretty soon we may not be able to tell very well. But, I can sort of tell. And, there's some telltale things that AI does when it's writing. Because, how they do this, they write a script, and they use AI to write the script, and then they use an AI voice to read the script. And so the writing sort of sticks out. They always like to say something like, not only was it this, it's that too. Or not only was it this, it's that too. Or in conclusion, there's some telltale things you can hear in the script that tells you that it's AI. You can hear by my little broken delivery here that it's just me sitting at the desk talking into a microphone. There's no, no AI involved with this part. The transcript, of course, will be AI generated, but it just takes what I said and types it. And that's what it's good at. It's not necessarily good at generating that stuff. And I always like to say, never ask the AI its opinion. It's just weird. It's just weird. But, and that goes along with the scam stuff. It used to be, it was really easy to tell a scam email because generally it was somebody that English wasn't the first language or their first language. So they would, misspell things, use weird grammar, all that. Well, with now these large language models, that's exactly what they do right, is they clean up the the grammar, the pronunciations to a point. Some of the pronunciations are kind of wacko, but if you type it out a certain way, they'll say it the right way. So, that's not always the case, but, it's with the voices. But, like I say, you get a spam email nowadays, it's really hard to tell, by the broken English that it's a scam. Of course, if they're asking you to pay something immediately or something bad will happen, it's a scam, hang up. If they're asking you to pay them in iTunes gift cards or any gift cards, it's a scam. They're asking you to send crypto, it's a scam. I hate to say it, there's nothing particularly wrong with crypto, but that is one of the ways the scammers get people. And it's too bad because, it is kind of an interesting technology and an interesting way to move money for sure. So, yeah, just you got to watch the scams and getting back to the ad stuff. You watch YouTube if you're not a member, you're not paying YouTube for YouTube Premium. They'll cut you right off at mid-sentence. Cut off the video in mid-sentence to play you an irrelevant ad or sometimes a relevant ad, but still, it's like, really? I just wanted to hear the rest of that guy's sentence. And, it's just maddening. Watching regular TV, which I do periodically, the ads on TV have gone down in value a lot. It used to be you watch your local TV station and it was ads for something you might be interested in, the local lumber yard, the car dealer, the this or the that. But now, at least here in Michigan, and I guess that probably is a regional thing, but at least here in Michigan, it's all the online gambling stuff. And oh my gosh, BetMGM and, just all the different online casinos are just advertising the hell out of local TV. I guess it must work because they keep doing it, but I've never once did any online gambling, and I never once will do online gambling. And then social media. Oh my gosh, the amount of AI on Facebook, and not that it's all bad. Again, I'm not ditching on AI because it's really good at what it's good at. But now they have a thing like in Facebook groups, which is probably the most useful thing on Facebook is the Facebook groups. You join a group about, whatever niche you're interested in, and you can get some information there and discuss things and ask questions and all that. And that is all fine and dandy. But now they have these AI users that go in there and try to start conversations. And it's so obvious that either they're trying to stir up crap or just get conversations going, which is not a bad thing, but some of it is just inane. It's insane. It's crazy. It's nuts. Oh my gosh. I follow a couple of carnivore Facebook groups. and or flying Facebook groups, airplane stuff. And, if you're on a group that's, not very high volume, meaning there's not a lot of posts there, sometimes an AI agent will pop in and ask a question or say something controversial, and especially with the carnivore stuff, because, the carnivore people are just about as bad as the vegans. Like I said, no shade on either, but they definitely take their way of eating as the only way, and how dare you? But, somebody goes in there and asks if, pure maple syrup is acceptable on carnivore. No, it's all sugar. That's obvious. But these AIs don't really know that, or that maybe they do and just want to stir up crap. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting. Or they'll have AI video shorts. Facebook's just full of these AI videos that are airplanes doing impossible things, and it looks pretty damned realistic until you realize, there's no way that airplane did that. Just no way. And then, the other one that really bugs me on Facebook. Okay, I'm on my soapbox. One that bugs me on Facebook is they have this thing called Threads that competes basically with X, Twitter. And they'll post something on your timeline on Facebook that, it's just the blurb, and it says hit read more. You read more. It says read more on Threads, and tries to get you to sign up for Threads. I don't need any more social media. I don't even like the social media I'm on. I'm on it for specific things, like Facebook. I'm on it for the groups that I deal with, and a little bit of work stuff. I'm on X a little bit. Like I said, don't use that for a whole lot, but it is kind of an interesting place to look up news, especially something that's actively happening. But I'm not going to get on Instagram. I'm not going to get on Threads. I'm definitely not going to get on Blue Sky, which is another Twitter competitor. Not going to get on Truth Social. That's another Twitter competitor. I've got all the social media I want. I have to be on LinkedIn professionally, so I am on LinkedIn. Not particularly fond of that either, because that is a mostly spam generator. And I'm on Reddit a bit, but Reddit is kind of the best of Facebook groups, but more just on the web, which is, I don't consider that really social media. And, you can find some interesting stuff on there. It's worth doom scrolling, but I've often said I am going to switch to a flip phone when I retire. If you want to call me, call me. If you want to text me, I may read it on my flip phone, but I'm definitely not going to get into a conversation with you. And don't think of texts as real time. Texts are like emails. I'll get to it when I get to it. If you really need something in real time, dial the number and talk to me. And if I don't answer you, leave a voicemail and I will call you back. Don't just call over and over and over and over again. I guess I'm going to be a tech curmudgeon. I'm Gen X. I started before all this tech. And, I think I want to go back to that at some point. Although I always listen to podcasts and probably watch YouTube or whatever replaces it in the future. As long as it's indie creators. That's the thing with podcasting. It's definitely sort of, I don't know if it's bifurcating, but the beauty of podcasting has always been that anybody and everybody can do it. And it's getting easier and easier and easier and easier to do. There's, myriad of hosting companies out there that'll help you generate an RSS feed and get you distributed everywhere. Of course, I like Blueberry, but, there's a bunch of them that do that. And that's all that's required is generate an RSS feed, record something, sit down, talking to the microphone. And I read a study, or I don't know if it's a study, but a report by Tom Webster from Sounds Profitable, formerly from, what's the company? Anyway, a research company he worked at for years. And then now he's, got a thing called Sounds Profitable, which is kind of another sort of research and monetization thing. And he was saying that, a lot of people look to podcasting for authentic sounding audio, information, the indie talking into the microphone. I'm sitting in a shed in my backyard. Yes, I have some fancy equipment and all that, but that's not even necessary either. I'm just a gearhead, so I like it. But the thing is that the more podcasts that sound like broadcasts, and the sound, hey, we're here at the White House today, blah, 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 where they're just broadcasting at you. Well, I'm talking, okay? And, I tell you anytime you want, you can email me, mike@mikedell.com, and talk back to me. Send me a file or whatever, and, we can have a conversation. I'm not sitting here trying to make a broadcast quality thing. It's just not what it is. This is, some dude sitting in a shed in his backyard just talking into a microphone. I don't expect to set the world on fire with it. I'm not trying to get advertisers to pay me $1 gazillion to talk into the microphone. Yeah, that would be good. And if that ever happened, I wouldn't do it here, but I'd do it wherever they wanted me to do it. Whatever, sure. Write me the check. But it's not the same thing. And I think that's the thing in podcasting. There are professional level shows. I'm not saying they're better. They're more broadcasty. In fact, a lot of people that were formerly in broadcasting, which, radio's dying. It's a dying art form. I kind of hate to see it because, radio has its place and it's pretty awesome. But, some of it is just really, you go in any city and flip through the FM dial and there's, the same 20 or 30 formats that sound exactly the same as the 20 or 30 formats in your city. And there's really not a lot of differentiation between them now in every city, or at least every broadcast area. There are a couple of indie sort of radio stations. We have a good example of it here in Michigan. We've got a group of radio stations owned by a family, and they have a rock station, they have a talk station, they have an oldies station, and a country station, and they are locally generated radio. They might be in syndication for some of it. The talk station, of course, is in syndication for part of the day, but they do have locally generated programming. Their morning shows on all the stations, their morning shows have live people in the studio from, whatever till 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And there's some personality there where there's not in some of the, some of the other stations. There might not even be anybody in town that works for that radio station. It's just, plugged into the satellite and just another outlet for Bob FM or whatever they call it. We have one here called Bob FM, and that's just a format. But, podcasting is kind of going that way. A lot of podcasts, have a team of 30 people working on production for this thing, and it's highly produced, wall of sound, sound design, and, they read the credits at the end of the podcast, and it's, it's just a myriad of people. And again, nothing wrong with that. The water's warm. Come on in, make a podcast. But I can get just as distributed as the one with a team of 30 with my team of 1. And that's the beauty of podcasting. And I think we're losing that somewhat. Now, again, there's probably just about as many indie podcasters out there that are doing something similar to what I'm doing, or maybe stepping it up a bit because I'm not consistent, as you know. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of difference in distribution. So my show is available right beside Joe Rogan. Yeah, more people are going to listen to Joe Rogan, of course. my show's there. And, if I was a little more consistent and promoted it a bit, maybe I'd, gain some more audience. That's great. But, that's not my goal here. My goal here is to have a place where I can jump on the microphone and talk for however long about whatever I want. And, it doesn't cost me that much. And that's, I think, the beauty of independent podcasting. Even if you get 20 listeners, well, do you have, a room with 20 people in it? Does that seem like a small amount? That would keep you pretty busy if you had to entertain them for an hour or whatever, however long your show is. So, there's room for all of us, and that's the beauty of it. But I don't want people to think now that, if I don't get 5,000 listeners an episode, what's the use of doing it? Blah, 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 or you're not going to quit your job. The most heartbreaking thing I can hear on the phone when somebody calls Blueberries, hey, I just got laid off from my job, so I want to start a podcast to make money. It doesn't happen that way. Unless you're already famous for something, podcasting takes some time. If you really work at it and, do all the right things, which obviously I don't, but if you do all the right things, yeah, maybe you can make a few bucks, but you're not going to quit your day job or replace a day job with a podcast tomorrow. You could get started on it tomorrow, but I would be making some other plans to make some money for a while, because that's just generally not going to happen. And you have to have three things to succeed in podcasting. You have to have you have to be consistent. That's one thing. You have to, I don't know, be authentic, I guess would be the best way to put it. I mean, and on top of that, your information has to be either interesting or informative or compelling in some way. A friend of mine, Dave Jackson, the other day on a webinar, he says, everybody tells you got to be consistent, and and you've got to be, I forget what he said. Jeez, see, I got brain farts. You know what? I'm going to leave that in there. I'm not going to edit because, hey, this is authentic. We're just having a conversation here. I just happen to be the only one talking, which sometimes happens in real two-way communications, which I'm working on. But, he says I could scream into the microphone for 5 minutes and then put it out every Tuesday at 4, but who's going to listen to it because it's not good? So, there's three elements to that. The technology, I would say, with a tiny bit of learning, you can tackle the technology, even if you're not very technically advanced. And that's the other thing. It's not required to be technically advanced anymore. It used to be. Everybody, when I started 21 years ago, everybody had to be a geek. And that's everybody involved. Everybody that listened, anybody that created a podcast had to be a geek or hire a geek. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. Learn a little bit about audio production, which it's not super hard. Make it not sound bad, compress it to an MP3, and upload it to a podcasting host or your WordPress website or some way to get it into an RSS feed. Don't do stupid stuff by naming the files all the same. Get a piece of artwork. You can go on Fiverr and for $10 or $15, have somebody design you some cover art, and voila, you're there. Not really all that hard to do. Whereas, if you wanted to start a radio station, that takes years. You get construction permit. You got to buy a ridiculous amount of equipment, towers and transmitters and studio equipment and studio building, and somebody go out and sell ads for you, and some ridiculous electric bill in 2 or 3 spots, depending on how your transmitter and your studio work. Plus you probably got to bribe a bunch of FCC people to approve the license. So, it just takes a ton of money. With podcasting, you go to go to Best Buy, buy a $50 microphone, plug it into your computer that you already have, download some free software, record. And then, get a hosting plan. A Blueberry, $15 will get you on the air. And there's other places to do it as well. Like I said, I'm not here to make a commercial for Blueberry, but it's not particularly hard anymore. And, the hard part is get it out there because, there are, in theory, 4+ million podcasts out there. Now, you're really only competing with about 500,000 realistically, and you're not competing with anybody that is you. That's the other thing. People come to podcasts and listen to podcasts because of the person almost more than the subject matter. And I can think of a couple of examples of that. I actually listen to a couple of podcasts about subjects that I don't really care all that much about. I just like the host. They have a lot of other information and I am learning about that subject matter, but it's, they're just a compelling person. And they're authentic and they give good information, or at least what I think is good information. And that's the other thing. Never, ever, 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 ever believe anything you see, hear, or read. And that could be on the internet, on TV, anywhere. Unless you see something with your own 2 eyeballs. In my case, 1 eyeball at this point, just because the other one's still healing. But, unless you see it personally, or hear it personally, without technology, you can't believe it because everything is manipulated. And I can go into a whole tirade about the news business, but I won't. That's not what this episode's all about anyway. So I know I was all over the place. Been a while since I podcasted, blah, blah, blah. I say it every time. But, I'm compelled to talk into the microphone. I've got one. And I can do it. And we are going to be restarting the Podcast Insider show. We're kind of revamping that as well. For quite a while, we were just doing generic podcast topics and, just cranking them out every week. And it was just getting redundant. So we're reformatting that into more conversational, kind of what I'm doing here. But with, it's going to be 2 or 3 of us at a time doing that and talking about, some thing going on in the industry or, some trend. There's a trend towards video right now. What people don't understand is video's always been part of podcasting. But now it's getting a little more front and center. And that's fine, but don't feel like you have to do video. Video is so much more difficult. Video, sure, you can hold your iPhone up in front of your face and do shorts and all that. That's easy. But, doing long form videos, if I was doing this in video, I'd have to worry about my lighting. I'd have to, shave. I haven't shaved in a couple of days. Probably put on a shirt that's not this rough T-shirt that I'm on. And, I'm sitting here enjoying an adult beverage. I wouldn't want to do that on a video that I put out, but I could do it when I'm on the microphone. So, there are some advantages to doing just audio. A lot easier to edit. If you screw something up and you want to edit, I don't edit these very often, so this was not edited. But if you wanted to edit, say you said something stupid or you flubbed something up and you want to cut that out, it's a lot harder in video than it is in audio. So, just keep that in mind. I don't think video for the creator side is going to be as popular as everybody seems to think it is. But hey, we at Blueberry, we're actually working on a video product. We've always supported video, but we're going to support it a lot better coming soon. And make it affordable and make it so that, if that's what you want to do, you have that option. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. It used to be, a long time ago when we first started this stuff, if you built it, somebody would come. There was 100 podcasts when I started. most podcasters and most podcast listeners listen to a fair number of those 100 shows because that's all that was out there. Now there's, millions of them, and, some of them are active, Like I said, I'm guessing around 500,000 active podcasters, and active is defined different ways. I figure if you haven't put out an episode in 90 days, it's not active. So this one really wasn't active until today. So I probably got counted in the inactive list there, but I'll try not to do that as long, but I say that every time and it never works. So, hey, you know what to expect. If you've been with me long enough, I put out stuff when I put out stuff, and no pressure. That's kind of a nice way to do it. Of course, I've been doing the daily, Cup of Traverse City, and then I ended up taking a month off, and I tried to restart it this week, and just things got in the way. But I'll get back to that, and it'll be 5 days a week, 5 minutes, and that's fun. That's fun. I don't mind that pressure, and especially since I've said all along, if this isn't fun, I'm not going to do it. Or if I'm, indisposed at some point, I'll take a day or 3 or a month off, but, I'll try. And the same with this one, I'll flip on the microphone more often, maybe not. I would like to, because I enjoy it. Well, geez, I've been talking for 45 minutes, and I figure that's enough for this round. And please let me know. Are you still listening? Are you still subscribed or following or whatever? And more importantly, what do you think? Do you think, technology's just going off the deep end, or am I just being a crusty old man sitting here, shaking my hand at the kids on my front lawn? That could be either. So I'm not opposed to being wrong, or at least having a different opinion. So with that, everybody have a good, however long it is till I talk to you again. Catch me later.